What up everyone, it's Kirtan Singh here and I'm back with a brand new video. Today I'm simply just going to share my thoughts on Game of Thrones The Battle of Winterfell. Because this episode is very decisive and to be honest, I was expecting a lot more from it. That said, there are some good moments in this episode itself. Really, I like how the camera work is done in this film, especially that opening with that one single shot. It establishes the tone, establishes how characters are feeling, and it shows what certain characters are doing. But that said, throughout the episode, it really gets worse and worse. I like how Melisandre comes out of nowhere, somehow, but she comes out, she does this whole lighting the sword thing for the Dothraki, and it's really cool. But then they just charge into darkness for some reason, and I don't get why, really, but it looked cool, and I think the symbolism of the flames going out was really well done. As expected, they all fall back into the castle, and the whites slowly get closer and closer and closer. That's well done and all, and, it's expected. So it's nothing too special there, nothing bad there. The problem happens when you see that the main characters like Brienne of Tarth, Jaime, Pod, they're being backed against the wall inside the Winterfell castle itself, and they look like they really should be dead. But then they're there for so long fighting off the whites, and it doesn't really seem practical at all that I can believe that they're going to survive that. So one or two of them should have definitely died. I feel like Samwell should have definitely died because he was lying on the floor and he was killing whites like that. He's not like a small guy who can hide amongst the dead bodies. He's a pretty big guy, and surely, lying down, he's pretty defenseless. Let's talk about Jon Snow, because I don't know why Jon was riding on the dragon for most of this episode. He's a ground fighter. He should be with his soldiers fighting. I get that, he can ride dragons and whatnot, and he likes Daenerys, but he's useless on the dragon. And we know the dragons don't need riders to be, capable of fighting. So then you should have put Jon in the battle itself and then give him a chance to fight, one of the generals that we're seeing just standing there for some reason, or even the Night King himself. Because Jon Snow's whole arc has been him preparing for the winter that was coming. He didn't care about the throne and what was going on with the Iron Throne and Cersei and everything. He simply cared about the Night King. And then to have him not really fight the Night King or even any of the generals at all was very, very disappointing. He was very useless the whole episode, and even at the end, he didn't have that big battle. Now on to Arya Stark, who's probably the most decisive character in this episode, because I've seen a lot of people complain about how Arya was really a Mary Sue. I've seen how they say that she has no reason to have survived this whatsoever, and she has no reason to have killed the Night King, and I really don't think her killing the Night King was much of a problem, because I think her killing the Night King, was kind of set up throughout this whole episode, and she had the special weapon and whatnot, she had Bran's dagger, it was set up very subtly, but if anyone was meant to die by Arya's blade, it should have been Cersei, because she was the one who was on her list, and she was the one she was always going to fight. So why have her kill the Night King when that was Jon Snow's whole arc, when he doesn't care about Cersei all that much? If anything, he's only gonna fight Cersei for the sake of, Daenerys or something. But his whole arc was about killing the Night King. Why have Arya do it when her whole arc was about killing Cersei? And, I have no problem with her sneaking up on him and, running past all the generals and whatnot, because her whole arc has also been about her training to be a fighter, practicing with the gods of death and whatnot. She's blended in. She puts people's faces on, for God's sake. So I have no problem with her sneaking past the generals. But as an assassin, I think it's really stupid how she would jump at the Night King and decide to scream. Because that's the only reason why the Night King turned around. The Night King doesn't have like precognition or whatever, where he's like, someone's coming from behind, and he turns around. No, he heard her scream coming, and he turned around and, grabbed her and whatnot. But for an assassin, you don't scream when you're about to kill someone from behind. That's the one problem I had with that scene. I feel like the Night King should have done more than what he did. He was riding his dragon and he fell off like nothing really happened. Then he was on the floor, got attacked by dragonfire. For some reason he knew he wouldn't get hurt, I'm guessing, because he just grinned and he walked off and whatnot. And then he simply just walked to Bran eventually. He didn't fight Jon, he didn't fight anyone else. He was just there, just walking around for the most part, expressionless. And I get he's more of a presence than anything, but, you can't just have a villain who's a presence and have them accomplish or really do nothing, especially in the final battle. Speaking about coming up for the final battle, in the previous episode before the Battle of Winterfell, we ended with Jon telling Daenerys that he is in fact a Targaryen, and she says that he's next in line for the throne. And you kind of get the vibe that, there's going to be some tension between them, but there is none at all. Within the next episode, within the Battle of Winterfell then, Daenerys and Jon are both, fine. They're helping each other out, they're fighting together, and it doesn't look like there's any tension whatsoever. So why would you end the previous episode on that type of cliffhanger and make the whole idea that, there's going to be some tension between them, some sort of disruption, and then, nothing comes of it in the next episode. Finally, the biggest problem I probably had, and many people had with this episode itself, was that it was very poorly lit. Now, you can light it poorly and make it really dark for, aesthetic reasons and for the fact that you have this certain style you're going for, but there is a limit to how dark you can make an episode. We've seen night battles before in previous movies and previous TV shows, and they've been really good. Like, you can see them well, but you get the sense that it's dark and eerie and whatnot. But then, in this episode itself, we had to turn up the brightness on our TV when we were watching it, and then that distorts the image itself, so it doesn't look as good, but at least we can tell what's going on. And there were some scenes, of course, when there was a lot of fire and whatnot, where you could really see what was going on, but for the most part, it was terrible. And for the cinematographer, or whoever was the director of photography, I don't know who said it, but they said people just don't know how to adjust their TVs and whatnot. You gotta be kidding me when you say something like that, because for the fact that we have to adjust our TVs for this specific episode we're watching is ridiculous in itself, when we can watch other shows and movies and see them perfectly fine when they're set at night. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. This is just me sharing my quick thoughts on Game of Thrones, the Battle of Winterfell itself. I don't know if I'll do another one when we see the battle between Cersei and Daenerys and whatnot, but I just wanted to share my thoughts out there because this episode, for Game of Thrones standards, was very bad. It's not necessarily a bad episode in TV itself, but for Game of Thrones standards, you just expect more. Let me know what you thought about the episode itself, and I'll catch y'all next time.